Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to the M4J network here on OpenTTD. Before I get into the episode proper, there was meant to be an episode last week. There wasn't an episode last week, was there? No, there wasn't. There was meant to be one, but I didn't have time to record it. And I kind of wanted to let the dust settle a little bit on the last episode, because I got a bit ranty and a bit... I get passionate about rail. I'm sure you guys can agree with me on that one, and relate to me on that one too. Sometimes you get really passionate about a subject and you just want to... talk about it, really. But yeah, that's first bit. Second bit, I don't actually know how long this video is going to be right now, so the background footage you're watching, literally only really recorded it so I had something to talk about. Had something to talk over while I was going through these points that I want to make today. I will tell you what happens in the footage in a second, but before I do that, was there any more housekeeping? Oh yeah. So yeah, basically the footage might be sped up. It might be normal speed. Who knows? But you'll see me adding trains basically to the network. So today's episode, the background footage is me adding 4 new Overground, Guard City Overground services. One between Guard City, St. George and Bunhattan via the new line that we built last time out. The second one being between Guard City, St. George and, is it Invertwood? I think it is, which is the other new terminus station we built last time out. And then I also decide to head south, and I have one from, again, I think GSG or GSC, Guard City St. Christopher, for those of you who don't know, down through Shoreham Junction and onto that Overground branch that hasn't had any trains on it for as long as I can remember, at least, down to, I think it's Garnington is the name of that terminus station. And then we have another service that starts at Guard City St. Thomas that also runs down to Garnington. So I think we're pretty covered in terms of the Overground now. There are branches that still don't have services, but I think until the database is ready, and I don't have an update on that right now, I'm afraid. Hopefully George has an update for me on that at some point. Because again, I want to take the lead on it, but every time I try to take the lead on it, I have no time. So I feel like it's progressing slowly purely because of that, to be honest. But yeah, once that's up and running, the Overground and the Underground and things like that will be some of the first ones that will get the treatment, because I think that's quite a densely compact part of the network. So it's a good place to really stress test the whole system. I also recorded this footage on my laptop, so if the footage is a bit choppy, that's part of the reason. And also, I forgot that I used to have it set up so that the sides were cut off, so that the top and bottom actually reached the screen. We didn't have those black bars. So if you do see me like adding a train on the left hand side of the screen and you can't read what it says, I already know. Apologies for that. I've actually fixed it now, so that won't be the case anymore. It's annoying that OpenTTD doesn't have 1920 by 1080 exactly. It's always got to have the black bars above and below, but I'm just going to have to live with it now, to be honest. I might just put something in the background to hide it a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, so last time out, I reacted to the Integrated Rail Plan, the IRP, or the RIP, I think a lot of us are calling it right now. To be honest, I didn't know a lot about it when I reacted to it. I kind of was reacting based on what was said to me on Discord. I had a look at some of the images, I had a look at some of the very brief outlines. And I think, in hindsight, looking back, my reaction was still warranted and still justified. But now I've had a bit of time to actually go over the details. My Railway magazine arrived last week. Last week. And I've been going over that as well. It sucks, basically. This really sucks. There's some really cool things that have been announced as part of it. For example, the Transpennine route being electrified. That's good. And the Midland mainline being electrified from, is it Kettering, where it currently goes to, all the way up to Sheffield. That's good. But the fact that High Speed 2 right now, the eastern leg, is currently running only as far as East Midlands Parkway, and then from there it runs on conventional lines up to Nottingham, Derby and Sheffield, that means it's limited now to Sheffield only, because that's where the electrification runs out, so that you can't go from Sheffield to Leeds. So how the hell are these trains meant to be going all the way up to Newcastle? Surely we're not having bi-mode trains running on High Speed 2. That's just ridiculous. So that's stupid. And again, I'm not going to mince my words in this video. Believe me, I am not going to mince my words. So yeah, that's the first dumb thing. No High Speed 2 for Leeds. Capacity at Leeds is already screwed. That's one of the things I knew about anyway. They've tried to rectify that by committing, I think it's £100 million to investigating the West Yorkshire metro system. The government have allocated 100 million to start work on the West Yorkshire mass transit system and to look at options on how to take high-speed 2 trains to Leeds. They're making it sound like they're doing... You remember like Livingston back in Victorian times, heading off to Africa and exploring and finding things like Lake Victoria and stuff like that. It makes it sound like that. They're gonna run a mass expedition to try and find out how to get high-speed 2 trains to Leeds. Why not use the original high-speed 2 Eastern Leg plan? There was a station for Leeds. It was connected to the current Leeds station. That would have been a really good way to get high-speed 2 trains to Leeds. But what do I know? I'm just a YouTuber who doesn't know anything about railways, apparently. It really staggers me sometimes. And the way they tried to say it, like we've won in this battle against rail improvements as well. It's just utter bollocks, in all honesty. Utter bollocks. Hopefully you guys are sort of aligned with what I'm saying here. If you're not, then obviously that's fine. But, as I say, passions run high in things like this. And, I'm not from the north of England. You can pretty much hear that in my voice. But I do feel sometimes that the north are definitely the losers when it comes to these big infrastructure projects. High Speed 1 in no way benefits the north of England. The original Channel Tunnel rail link in no way benefits the north of England. It would have, had the regional stars and the night stars gone ahead, but those were cut back thanks to budget airlines, which we're now realising were not sustainable, and something like a regional star would have been good. Hop on a train in Swansea, get off in Paris. That sounds lovely to me. But there's a really interesting point here. And actually, I think it was Mastertrams who mentioned about capacity, not time. That's what we wanted. The Railway Magazine agrees, to be honest. So there's 2 points here. The first one is the Northwest now has a distinct advantage over the Northeast of England. So if there's a company moving to the north of England and they're deciding which side of the Pennines to put their headquarters, do they go to Manchester with direct connections to High Speed 2? Or do they go to Newcastle that have no direct connections to High Speed 2? I think they're going to go for Manchester myself. They're not even going to go for like York or Doncaster or Leeds because there's no high speed connections. So that's the first thing. The Northeast have been screwed in that department. And the second thing is they're so obsessed with journey times that they haven't realised that the capacity was the problem, not the speed. And like I said last time, some of the journey times are actually slower now than they were in the original proposal. And I'm not talking about the actual current journey times, by the way, because that's COVID affected. That's not a fair comparison. I'm talking about the planned journey times that have been announced recently compared to the original proposed journey times. Some of them are not just slightly slower, they are significantly slower than the original proposals. Who wins in that regard? Literally no one. I'd like to know what happens that causes these budgets to be changed. And again, I don't want to get too political here. Whoever the transport minister would be, I feel like their hands can be slightly tied as well. But I'd like to know what happens that actually makes these decisions. What happened that made it so that the original plans were no longer financially viable? If you could say COVID was that, then I would say, how's that fair? Because no one predicted that was going to happen 2.5 years ago. That came out of nowhere, let's be honest. So if you're basing your planned transport infrastructure for 2030 onwards based on something that 2.5 years ago no one knew was going to happen, I would say that's really stupid, because in that regard, we don't know what's going to happen 2.5 years from now. We might be in a situation where the economy is greatly improved, and then suddenly we're on the back foot because we've cancelled all these infrastructure plans. So that's one thing. Again, I had some points that I wanted to make, and I've forgotten half of them already. So yeah, there's a thing here about integrated rail plan winners and losers. So the integrated rail plan sees West Coast destinations gain, but Yorkshire and the North East lose out as plans for high-speed lines scaled back and replaced by conventional line upgrades. This is the bit that bugs me. So The East Coast main line is being upgraded anyway, and I think that's great. The southern end, especially in and out of King's Cross, is converting over to digital signalling. That's really, really, really beneficial. It means that trains can run closer together, they can run at a greater average speed, there's more paths potentially that will become available, and for things like Thameslink and the Azumas, I believe automatic train control might become more usable along the southern part of the East Coast main line, and in the case of Thameslink, not just through the core. And therefore you can have more trains per hour. And I think, because of that, you can then have more capacity. And that's the important bit. So it's not trains per hour, and it certainly doesn't improve journey times necessarily, but the capacity increases. And for someone who fortunately has not had to commute to London, but has a father who did have to commute to London, I can tell you secondhand that would be a good thing. My dad used to deliberately take the Moorgate line, even when he didn't work anywhere near Moorgate, because he was guaranteed a seat, because the train would originate at Welwyn Garden. By the time it stopped at Hatfield, it was only half full, so he was guaranteed a seat. Likewise, he would walk to Moorgate to get on the train, so that he would be one of the first ones on, and again, would get a seat. The fact that people have to go out of their way like that just to guarantee themselves a seat. I mean, we live in a world now where seating is not the priority on trains, it's standing room. But still, I like to sit down on trains. My legs aren't what they used to be. So I do think extra capacity is always good. The bigger trains have helped as well. And the digital signalling should also be a big benefit. But then we also have an East Coast main line. So I was reading about, is it the Selby bypass, I think it's called, or Sedgeway? I can't remember what it's called. I knew this. I watched a video on it the other day. There's a part of the East Coast main line that used to run, I think it is Selby. I'm going to say Selby. If it's not Selby, just replace the word Selby with the actual town name. I could probably be a good YouTuber and actually look it up quickly. Basically, there's a part of the East Coast main line that used to go through a town in Yorkshire. Used to go through a town in Yorkshire. I'm just trying to find it on this thing. Used to go through a town in Yorkshire, which I believe was called Selby. It might not have been called Selby, but it used to run over a swing bridge. And that was no longer, advantageous when faster trains came along. So the Deltics and then eventually the Class 91s. So they built a bypass around that part of the line. And they actually built that part of the line for 160 mile per hour running. Now, what do you notice about that sentence? There's not a single train in the UK that runs on conventional rails that can go up to 140 miles an hour, never mind 160. Now, the trains themselves can. The Class 91s were built with a maximum running speed, service speed, of 140 miles an hour. And they were built in the late 80s, early 90s. They have never been able to run at their designed service speed because the infrastructure has never been upgraded to allow for it. These were trains that were built. In fact, these are trains that are now being scrapped because of their age. These are trains that were built nearly 40 years ago. They never got to run at their maximum service speed. And we're talking about short-sightedness in terms of the new integrated rail plan. I think that's a very, very good example of it there. We do make it up as we go along quite a bit. We fly by the seat of our pants. And sometimes we get away with it, but not always. Again, I'm trying to keep to my points, but it's hard to, because heart sometimes wins over head. So to go back to what I was saying about the East Coast Main Line, we're supposed to be running high-speed trains on High Speed 2. We're then supposed to take those trains at East Midlands Parkway and somehow get them up to Leeds. I guess we're going to invent some teleportation device that's going to get them between Sheffield and Leeds because there's no electrified rail there. And then from Leeds, we're going to somehow reverse them back onto the East Coast Main Line, which, I mean, Birmingham has a reversal, I suppose, so that could be possible. But otherwise, that's not a... I keep forgetting the word. It's not a good way of doing it, basically. Efficient, that's the word I was looking for. It's not an efficient way of doing it. And then once they rejoin the East Coast Main Line, they then have to run on a line that was designed for 160 miles an hour, but has never seen 160 miles an hour, all the way up to Newcastle and beyond. That's not solving a problem. That's just taking a problem and moving it slightly to the left. I don't think that's a solution at all for this. And actually, going back to journey times quickly, I was thinking of an analogy for this earlier. And it's things like, instead of it taking half an hour to go between, I don't know, I'm just going to make up two cities here, between York and Sheffield. Instead of it taking half an hour, it's now going to take 28 minutes. And I've been reading a lot about roller coaster development at the moment, because there's a few exciting announcements going on. Apparently Thorpe Park are getting a hypercoaster, which, if that's true, I'll definitely be going back there one day. But it's a bit like building a roller coaster that's got the world height record of, I think the current height record is 458 feet. It's like building one that's 460 feet and then saying, you know, we broke the record. And it's like, you did, but not by much. And I think that's the kind of feeling I'm getting from this right now is, yeah, it's faster, but not by much. And I think that's kind of the slap in the face that I think a lot of the people in the north are feeling right now is they're being told, like, they're made to feel like they're supposed to be grateful for this. You know, being told that, you know, it's amazing, it's so much faster. But it's not so much faster. It's faster, but not so much faster. And also, parts of it have missed out. There was supposed to be a high speed, or at least a higher speed line. It was dubbed High Speed 3, but I don't think that was ever the official project title. That was meant to go between Manchester and Leeds via Bradford. That's been scrapped. That's been replaced by new construction and upgrades to the existing route. Which, again, is that actually a good thing? I don't think that is. It might improve the existing services, but if you're then trying to crowbar new services into the same sort of space, it's just going to end up with the same problem. Like, you're literally taking the problem and then magnifying it, because you're going to have more trains now running on a route that couldn't cope with the current number of trains. So I don't know how that's going to work. So yeah, the Midland Main Line will be electrified between Market Harbour. That might have been the current limit, actually. Between Market Harbour and Sheffield to enable high-speed services originating from London and Birmingham to reach Nottingham, Derby and Sheffield. Fine. But then from Sheffield, where do they go? The journey time reductions are significant, as for example, the travel time between Birmingham and Nottingham will be reduced to 26 minutes compared with 74 in the current timetable. And that's actually a good one. That's less than half. That's significantly less than half. But again, it's not the time necessarily that's the problem, it's the capacity. If we have a high speed line that can take tens of thousands of people an hour off of the West Coast Main Line, and then off of the East Coast Main Line, that increases the likelihood for more semi-fast and local services to take their place on those two lines, which means commuters, for example, going to and from London, or to and from Manchester, or to and from York, or even Leeds in this case, can actually get on a train for a start and actually get to work. And I know at the moment, again, with the recent announcements and stuff, that's not exactly a high priority, but I'm thinking from like 2030 onwards. So, 9 years from now, basically. And that's what everyone should be thinking about when they build these things. Population increases. It doesn't decrease. People don't suddenly disappear. They don't evaporate into thin air. More people are going to be using rail because more people are going to exist. That's the first thing. Second thing, we're supposed to be getting people out of their cars and onto the railway. How the hell are we meant to do that if there's no incentive to actually do it? If I refer back to the editor's notes, continuing to run East Coast trains on the current, albeit upgraded mainline into King's Cross will not bring the step change in capacity the industry was hoping for. And without such a step change for intercity journeys, there will be fewer extra paths made available for local trains and freights, which in turn makes it harder to convert car users and logistics firms from road to rail. Isn't that the whole point of these upgrades right now, is to try and get people off the roads, and especially off of aircraft, and onto the train? But we're not doing that. We're actually... I think what we're doing at the moment is putting off current rail users. There's no incentive for people to continue using the train. There's no big, bright future ahead of us right now. It's all a little bit... hang on, I'll retract that slightly. It does depend where in the country you live. If you live down in the southeast, like I do, there's actually quite a few things to be excited about. If you live in the north, northeast or northwest, as I said, it benefits slightly more. But the high-speed route between Manchester and Leeds being cancelled, there must be a few people who have been put off using the railway because of that. They'd rather get in their car and drive across to Leeds. It could end up having a detrimental effect on what was a good incentive to try and get people onto the trains. And again, I'm a rail enthusiast. I'm very, very biased here. There might be some people who just don't care. They'll take whatever's easiest for them. And in that case, fair play. But I will always use the train when I can, because I do prefer... I like not driving, for a start. And also I do like travelling by train whenever I can, especially if it's on a comfortable train, which I've been on a Pacer before. I had mixed feelings. Obviously, the novelty of being on a Pacer very quickly got bones shattered out of me. They're gone now, thankfully. Actually, I say thankfully. I like the fact that some have been preserved. It is a very important part of our heritage, and we should hold on to that still, but from a distance. I think that's the fairest way of doing it. But yeah, I like travelling by train. That's what I was trying to say. And I will keep travelling by train. But there are people who aren't rail enthusiasts, and they couldn't give a damn about how they get from A to B, so long as it's the quickest or the cheapest. So I can see why they were pushing journey times, because they're trying to get those people who don't care about anything other than journey times. But at the same time, when their train's delayed or cancelled because there's no capacity on the line, they're very, very quickly going to get bored of waiting for a train, and they're just going to hop in their car instead. And then you've lost a potential conversion. And that, as I said, is probably the most damaging thing to come out of this, is we're losing the battle to road again. And I don't think we're going to win it if we're going to keep doing stupid things like this. Anyway, that's pretty much the points that I wanted to make. The main points I wanted to make. There are other things that are worth talking about, but I do want to address the comments from the last video, because I think there were some very, very important corrections there as well. Excuse me one second. Yeah, there were some very, very important corrections there, and I think it's worth going over them. Oh yeah, also, there's a bit of a tip here. If you hold control while building bridges, you use the most recent bridge type. Didn't know that. That's a very good tip. Thank you. I'm going to butcher your name. Is it Leopolis? Leopolis? Leopolis. I'm going to say Eopolis as in Metropolis. Is that right? I hope that's right. Thank you for that tip. That's very, very useful. Very helpful. Also, they said it... watching these videos whilst playing OpenTTD makes it feel like listening to a podcast. Anyone who knows my my track record in the past, I used to host a podcast, so thank you. I think that was a compliment. I hope that was a compliment. I'd like to host a podcast again. I'm actually I'm gonna bang that drum for racing games one day and see where it goes. So yeah, Master Tram's first comment. For a more accurate breakdown of the phases of High Speed 2, I had it largely right, except for a few minor details. So phase 1 was London to Birmingham, which I got correct, and then a spur to connect it to the existing network. And I remember in the past complaining about all these little spurs that connected it to the existing network. High Speed 1 has them too. High Speed 1, though, was built more in stages. So it was, what was it? It was a Channel Tunnel to Ashford first. Then it was Ashford to Thingy Junction, can't remember the name of it, just before Ebbsfleet, I believe. And then from there it went up to St Pancras. But I think there's a lot of junctions along the route that connect it. So I think there's one near Hoo Junction that connects it up, and that's mainly used by freight trains. Oh, there is also one at Stratford as well that connects up to... Is it Temple Mills? North Pole's the old Eurostar depot, right? Temple Mills is... Temple Mills? Whatever it's called is the new one. I used to know all these things. I'm getting old. My memory's going. So yeah, the Spurs I'm not a huge fan of still. That goes for football as well, by the way. But yeah, I had phase 1 right. I think because phase 1 was the first bit that was announced, it's the one that stuck around the most. Phase 2A is from that spur that connects to the main line up to Crewe. And then phase 2B was then split into two. So the western leg includes Crewe to Manchester and the Golborne link, which connects phase 2B back to the West Coast main line south of Wigan, and then phase 2B eastern leg includes Birmingham to Leeds. So that's where I went wrong. I had phase 2A being the entirety of the western leg, and then phase 2B being the entirety of the eastern leg. That would be the smart way to designate them. I don't know why they haven't done it like that. Why Phase 2B is suddenly split into I and II as well. I don't know. But, yeah. So, that's one thing I got wrong. Another thing, so I talked about the Great Central Mainline. So apparently it wouldn't have been perfect to upgrade into high-speed rail because it was simply too curvy. It was built for freight and for 90-mile-an-hour express services. Thing is with that is obviously it would still be upgraded. A bit like the Midland Main Line. Some of the heavier curves would have been straightened. So Market Harbour, I believe, was one of those. This whole station was rebuilt to run on a straighter alignment. Because of that, trains can now run, I think it's 100 miles an hour. They can now run through there, whereas previously it was something like 60. So little upgrades like that. The point I was trying to make with the Great Central Main Line, the East Coast Main Line has the similar thing. It was built straighter and flatter than most conventional lines because there were, like, especially the East Coast Main Line, it was built across the Fens in Cambridgeshire. And there's just not a hill. I know people from that area, and I had to explain to them one day what a hill was, because when you go there, it's just perfectly flat. I think Ely is the only place that I've been to in that part of the world that has a hill. And it's just got this random hill in the middle of the city for no reason. It's like, yeah, it's probably an ancient burial mound or something. So yeah, I understand the point being made there, but at the same time, I think that the alignment would be straightened. Some of the alignment is being used for High Speed 2 for the first phase, and I think... So as a kid, I used to go to the Buckinghamshire Railway Centre at Quainton Road a lot, and I believe that part... I think the actual line through Quainton Road is staying as is, but just north of that, I believe, is where High Speed 2 takes over. And I know there's a bit where High Speed 2 crosses over East-West Rail. I'll come to that in a minute as well, if I've got time. But yeah, good point, fair point. There was something as well about Continental Gauge. I think it's one of these Mandela effect things where I think it's a misconception that it was built entirely to European gauge, but at the time it was built to what was known as European gauge. I think these days European gauge is now a lot bigger. And I did go on, I admit, not the best sources, but I went on Wikipedia and I went on the rail forums and found some things that backed up my point. And again, I'm not writing a university thesis. Believe me, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, had a mental breakdown. So I'm not quoting it directly as a source that backs up my argument. But the fact that there are other people talking about it doesn't make it true, but it makes it at least something that you can kind of fall back on. It's something I always knew about the GCR, was it was built to different standards to the rest of the main lines in the UK. And it was designed for faster running at the time, 90 miles an hour is nothing these days, and also wider loads. And that's why at the time it was seen as, if they ever did build a channel tunnel during the 1800s, the Great Central would have been the perfect line to connect it to, because then you could run straight up the spine of England and have bigger trains operating. The station at Manchester is going to be Piccadilly still. The route to Manchester is nearly the same as it always was. I think some things have changed. I think the bit around Manchester Airport changed where exactly the station was going to go. I think that's moved around a few times. It might have ended up back where it originally was, but I know there was some talk about where it was going to go. Now, here's the thing. When is an A train not an A train from Hitachi? We had this conversation as well. So I knew that the Javelins were A trains. And I knew that the Intercity Express trains were A trains. The AT300s, they're called. Now, the AT200s, I want to say, are the... Is it 385s that operate in Scotland? The one that had the windscreen issue, the curved windscreen. They're part of the A-train family as well. There are, in fact, monorail trains that are part of the A-train family. So I think it's one of these like really extended families that have got cousins and aunts and uncles that no one really talks to anymore, but they're still technically part of the family. So I probably shouldn't really say they're part of the A train. I think there's more. So the AT300s, I think if they create high speed 2 trains, they'll be the AT400s. And actually they have, I think it was today or yesterday, announced that Hitachi and Alstom have won a joint bid to build the trains for high speed 2. By the way, I'm recording this on Thursday, so it'll be yesterday or the day before by the time you watch this. They've won the bid. So I think that was always going to happen, to be honest. Alstom with the TGV, Hitachi with the A-Train. Very good pedigree, both of them. And if they're joining forces, I don't think either of them needed to join force, by the way, especially if you've got the creators of the TGV and the Shinkansen. I believe it is Hitachi that built the Shinkansen, wasn't it? I think so. They build some Shinkansens. It's whether they built the original ones. You don't really need them to team up. It's going to be like the team up to end all team ups. This, by the sounds of it. Yeah, and also looks can be deceiving. They might look different from the A-Train, doesn't mean they're different to the A-Train. As I said, some A-Trains don't even run on rails. That's how different they can be. And I think that's it in terms of comments and stuff as well. And I wanted to go over those because I think it's fair. If I make a mistake, I'll hold my hands up. And I've made a mistake there with the Great Central Mainline a little bit. And I know I've made some mistakes when I was talking about the high-speed 2 phases. And again, it's heart overhead. Sometimes you say something and then afterwards you think, oh, that was wrong. Hopefully today I've not done that because I'm trying to be more, thinking about it a bit more. But yeah, I want to see how this plays out. I don't think it's going to go very well. I want to be proved wrong. There's a lot of good happening in the UK right now for rail. Crossrail is starting to run full-scale tests. I think there's 150 different test scenarios I read about that they're going to be going through for the next few months. And it looks like somewhere between March and May, the central core will open. And I was watching Jeff Marshall's video on it, and he made that prediction. And I think, to be honest, they gave a big window, and I think it will be towards the latter end of that window, which is why they gave such a big window. But he thinks March to May. And depending on how well these tests go, he could well be right. So I'm going to kind of back him a little bit, but I think it's going to be slightly later in the year, maybe towards June, July kind of time for all of the stations to open. Is it Bond Street or Tottenham Court Road? One of those two is currently behind schedule. I mean, the whole thing's behind schedule, but you know what I mean. Is more behind schedule than the others. So we'll see how that plays out. East-West Rail is coming along. They're still debating on where to build the route from Bedford to the east. I think it was meant to go through Sandy, where it would connect with the East Coast Main Line. It's now going through St. Neots. And there's talk about it extending south, or I saw a headline. In fact, I'm reading it now on the front of my magazine. All East-West Rail goes south. I don't know whether that means they're going to run to King's Cross or what. I don't know. I kind of had a quick look at the article, but I didn't think it was important enough for this video. There's my other mistake. But I think... I mean, that's a 1960s, 70s problem that we built over the alignment. We turned some of it into a bloody guided busway, for God's sake. And now we need a railway again. It's kind of like, oh, shit, shouldn't have done that. So that's happened. Can't reverse that now. But that's another positive, East-West Rail. And it doesn't connect to High Speed 2, but it runs over High Speed 2. So that'd be a good place to stand and watch trains go by. The fact that we now have a company or a consortium building trains for High Speed 2. 2027, I read, would be when the first train is rolling off the production line, which means that phase 1 must be ready around then. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to clear, this was on Discord. I made a confusion where I said about High Speed 1 being completed was around about the same time as London Overground. Technically it was. London Overground, the project started, I think it was late 2006, early 2007. As we all know, St Pancras International opened in 2007. What I was referring to with High Speed 1 was actually the Javelin services, which were 2009. If I I think it was 2009. That was about when London Overground started coming online. I think 2010 was when it really kicked into gear, which was when the Javelin services really started. Do you remember those days, by the way, when High Speed 1 was finished early and they actually started running Javelins ahead of schedule? They literally just came out one day and said, yeah, we're ready, we might as well start. Do you remember that? When things were built on time and even before time and under budget and things like that? God, those were the glory days, weren't they? What happened to them? So that's what I was referring to, was Hitachi services. I keep going to call them something different. Javelin services 395s. That's right, isn't it? 395s. God, my brain is just melting right now. 395s. I'm going to commit to that. That sounds right to me. 375s are the Electrostars, 395s. Because where I live right now, they come past here. So I should know this. And every time I see one out the window, I get it wrong. And I make myself look like an idiot. 395s. They started running, I'm sure it was 2009, it might have been 2010. Someone I'm sure will correct me there. But they kind of happened at the same time as London Overground. That's what I was meaning to say. So I can understand that confusion because they were very different dates. 2007 to 2009. That's quite a gap. I think that's it in terms of things I wanted to get off my chest today. As I said, there are people who will have different opinions to me, and I love that. Please do join the Discord. Link is in the description down below. We can chat about that. There's no right or wrong, by the way. No one's going to... Well, there might be people that say you're wrong, but I won't be one of them. If there are other people who say that, I guess that's their opinion and they can't be wrong. So I want to have a good open conversation about this on the Discord, though, and I think we have that already, but I'd love more people to join in and get involved. I know that He Who Must Not Be Named has a bigger following when it comes to that sort of thing, but I'd like to build up something like that myself. I'm not going to do Wednesday night natters or whatever they're called, but I will listen to what people have to say. I do get quite cynical at times on Discord, I'll admit that, but it's mainly challenging. It's this thing I learned when I was a kid, where if you have a belief in something and someone challenges it and immediately deconstructs everything you've said, you probably should believe in something different. Again, without getting too political or religious here, that's different. That's completely different. But when it comes to something like, high-speed rail is great. If someone can deconstruct that argument in less than a minute, then you didn't really have an argument to begin with. So that's why I kind of do that on Discord. Someone might say something's really good, and I'm like, well, is it? And at that point, obviously, again, it's opinion, it's subjective. But if someone can argue against you quickly, then it's probably not a good argument to be having in the first place. That's my opinion. Again, someone might want to argue with me on that. That's fine. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this latest episode of the M4J Network podcast. I should do a podcast again on this channel even. I should do one. I think that would go down well. The only problem I've got right now is I don't really want to do it on my own. And my brother doesn't live with me anymore. And my girlfriend has said in the past she might do one, but I think we'd run out of things to talk about. We're not Chris Ramsey and his wife after all. So yeah, I'll put a pin in that. We'll see where that goes. But I'm glad you guys think of it like that, because that's kind of what it is. It's kind of like we're playing games together and we're chatting. That's what it is. That's what this channel was always meant to be honest. It's had some peaks, it's had some troughs, but I think it's still in a very, very good place. And to be honest, I'm looking at the screen right now, and I think this might actually be a real-time video, because I've pretty much filled the time slot, which is good. Although you will have seen all the times I stopped to look at the TV, because I kept getting distracted. But as I said, it's just background footage. It doesn't really matter too much. We've got the 4 services up and running. My laptop is running in the background right now, testing those services, so hopefully they've all worked. And yeah, we'll have some updates on the database in the future. In the new year, I definitely want to start working on it more. I keep talking about setting up a GitHub. I need to do that. Right now, with the day job, I'm actually building up a stockpile of videos, which should allow me to spend more of my evenings working on M4J stuff again. So hopefully I'll be able to start making regular content. I'm also trying to double book videos whenever I can. So Transport Fever is done for the next couple of weeks. This might be done for the next couple of weeks. I might try and record a video today when you're watching. And then we won't have to worry about missing uploads for a while. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And of course, if you're enjoying the series so far. Drop those comments down below. Ideas for future episodes. Feedback on what you think about the IRP, or the RIP as we're going to call it from now on. Head over to the Discord as well for that. I've had some questions recently about where do you talk about train sim on the Discord, where do you talk about SimSig. There is some scope for talking about that in the M4J network chat, but one thing that has highlighted is there are people who are interested in railways but not necessarily OpenTTD. So I think I might either rename the M4J network chat, or I'll create a new chat specifically just for talking about railways and trains and things, because some of the game-centric ones and the series-centric ones are meant to just be for those subjects. And I've kind of opened the sluice gates a little bit and not been able to close them again. And also, please post video links only in the video links chat. I keep banging my head against the wall every time someone forgets to do that. I can understand why you'd forget, but yeah, it clogs up the chat. It's not always fun. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. Have a good weekend, and until next time, I will see you soon.